On today's show, we're looking at what a healthy Jacob deGrom season would look like. How many of the Rangers franchise records would he shatter by just a healthy, average season? All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Now, I wanted to get into, because there's been a lot of debate about the health of Jacob deGrom and, if he's healthy, if he's not healthy, if all this nonsense. And I just wanted to, sort of, it's a light day. There's not been a lot happening for the Rangers. The A's made some trades. They traded their catcher, Sean Murphy, to the Braves. There are a lot of other mid-tier free agents signed. Carlos Rodon is still on the board, and there are still some other things to be done. But I wanted to take a look at Jacob deGrom and imagine a wonderful world where he is healthy next season. And the thing that prompted this is I've talked a lot about how I think the concerns for injuries are overblown. The assuredness that everyone is so sure that he is going to be hurt for sure. There's no way he's going to make 30 starts, whatever. I think that's a little bit overblown. And this quote I saw in The Athletic, Levi Weaver's Weaver Wire article this week, kind of really sparked my interest. Not something that I remember him saying at the press conference. Maybe they had this when they were not streaming and just had some extra quotes for the people who were there. But this is a quote from the article from Jacob deGrom. The goal is to go out there and make 30-plus starts every year. The injury in spring training of 2022 was a kind of a weird one, a stress reaction in my scapula, but once I came back, I felt great. The goal is to make 30-plus starts every year, end quote. Then Levi goes on to say, deGrom said the reason to believe that particular injury won't be an issue moving forward, based on conversations he had at the time with Rangers head team physician Dr. Keith Meister, who also works with pitchers around the league. Quote, Meister was like, look, when this heals, you're completely fine, deGrom said. And when I came back, I felt great, end quote. And that might be the most freaking encouraging thing I've read since Jacob deGrom signed with the Rangers. I mean, obviously we all know the potential and how great it is, but hearing him say that and hearing Meister, who is pretty much, it seems like one of, if not the leading expert on injuries and pitchers in general, in terms of their health, if he said to deGrom that you're going to be just fine once this goes away, this is not going to be a recurring thing, that's amazing news, because of the 2 injuries, the elbow injury that he had in 2021 that caused him to lose time during he was on pace to have one of the greatest seasons of pitching ever. Honestly, ever. It was just that fantastic. But some elbow injuries, an elbow injury, I should say, is what slowed that down. But then when I heard he had a shoulder injury, I was like, okay, shoulder injuries are a little more concerning. You're a little more worried that those are going to have some lasting effects. But if Keith Meister is like, you're A-okay, buddy, you're going to be just fine. This is going to take you out for a while, but you'll be just fine when you get back. And he looked just fine, more than just fine when he got back. He looked like his normal, new and improved deGrom self. Because the last 3 years, even though he hasn't pitched fully healthy, well, he pitched fully healthy in 2020, but that's been since his last Cy Young. He has kind of taken it to a whole nother level in terms of his efficiency, how good he is, and just the amount of the pure stuff somehow still getting better in his mid-30s. Next year is going to be his age 35 season. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Right now, Fangraphs projects him for 29 games started, 172 innings pitched, a 2.64 ERA, 5.5 FWAR, and 236 strikeouts. Now, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to say 30 because that's the goal. Let's give him 30 starts. Say he's fully healthy and going that way, and they don't want to give him the extra 2 starts. They skip him every once in a while just to keep him fresh and healthy and make sure that he is ready for a playoff push should the Rangers end up making that playoff push, which, again, I talked a little about yesterday, how likely I think they are to do that. But let's look at what he's done the last 3 years. He's averaging a little under 6 innings pitched. Let's give him 6 innings per start the last 3 years, and 1.2 strikeouts per innings pitched. So let's multiply that out. Let's look at the last 3 seasons. 38 games started, 224 and a third innings, 205 ERA, 352 strikeouts, 8.4 baseball reference WAR, and 9.7 Fangraphs WAR. Now, that's over 3 seasons, 38 starts. That's a little more than a full season's workload if he's healthy. So let's say he gets 30 starts. What does that look like? Well, looks like 180 innings pitched, 218 strikeouts, 6.63 BWAR, baseball reference WAR, and 7.67, so 7.7 Fangraphs WAR. Now, where would that stack up with what was given out last year? Well, that would lead Fangraphs WAR by a mile, by 1.4, ahead of Aaron Nola, who led the league in Fangraphs WAR last year. Carlos Rodon was at 6.2 Fangraphs WAR. Justin Verlander is at 6.1. So that is significantly better in only 180 innings. Now, Rodon pitched under 180 innings, so did Verlander, but Aaron Nola did pitch 205 innings. So this is already a really, really good look. 236 strikeouts would be, I think that would lead all of baseball last year. No, it wouldn't. Garrett Cole had 257 strikeouts, so that would not quite be leading the league. It wouldn't even be leading the National League. Corbin Burns had 243 strikeouts last year, but he also had 33 starts and 202 innings, which, again, is not exactly what I think that deGrom is going to get next year. He very well could, but let's just say for argument's sake that this is what he is. That is a fantastic pitcher. That is definitely, I think, good enough. We're going to look a little bit more of what his competition will be in the AL Cy Young, and let's look at what his career averages would rank just among Rangers franchise history, because, spoiler alert, they look really darn good. But first, this episode is brought to you by SimpliSafe. At Locked On Rangers, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over the holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, SimpliSafe. And right now, SimpliSafe is offering Locked On Rangers listeners 40% off a new security system. But don't put this off. Here is why you'll love it. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get a higher priority police response. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs under $1 a day, less than half the price of traditional home security systems. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. Get 40% off any new system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB today. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Now, an average, we're going with an average for Jacob deGrom's career. Look at where he would rank among Rangers' single season records, because, spoiler alert, it's really darn impressive. For a 162 game season, he's got a 2.52 career ERA. A 2.52 career ERA. That's absolutely insane. That's 34 starts, 216 innings, 261 strikeouts, 2.1 walks per 9, 0.8 homers per 9, a whip under 1, and 10.9 strikeouts per 9. Now, let's take a look at where some of these different things rank. His career ERA of 2.52. If he had just that this season, just that average year, including all the years where before he started throwing an average of 99 and 95 mile an hour sliders, well, that would be the 4th best since the franchise moved to Texas. His average baseball reference WAR per season of 6.7 would be the 4th best. Just a real quick note on that. The top 3, the ones who would be ahead of him, would be Mike Minor's 2019 season of 8.0, Fergie Jenkins in 1974, 7.7, which is tied with Lance Lynn in 2019 for 7.7. The fact that the Rangers had their two of their best, well, 2 seasons WAR-wise in 2019 and still didn't make the playoffs. Man, if the rest of that rotation was just fine, what could have been that year? Anyway, let's look at his average strikeouts per season at 262. That'd be third in the franchise. Third in the franchise, just an average season. His ERA plus would be third. His fielding independent pitching would be fourth. His whip of under 1, no one else has done that. That would be the best season in Rangers franchise history, and it's been even better than that lately. The best right now is Nolan Ryan's 1991 season of 1.006. That is just absolutely fantastic. That is how good Jacob deGrom has been. It's just kind of also a little bit condemnation of the Rangers pitching franchise history, but I feel like this isn't the only franchise where he'd be setting a whole lot of pitching records, because that's just with an average season for him, because that's just how good he is. But the Rangers have really been starved for a capital A ace since, in my opinion, Yu Darvish. I don't think there was a debate about that. But with deGrom here, there is no longer a debate of, oh, is he an ace? Oh, does he, leave too many runners on? Does he not have enough shutdown innings, or whatever nitpicky crap people wanted to say about Yu Darvish that, made him seem like he wasn't one of the best pitchers in baseball while he was here. There's not going to be any debate about that, about deGrom. He is just the best, the absolute best. By the way, let's look at some of his contemporaries, the guys who are in his range of caliber of pitcher. 2 guys I want to look at that are both in conversation for the greatest of their generation, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, and what they did in their age 35 seasons, which, by the way, deGrom isn't 35 just yet. He turns 35 in June 19th. So he's still 34 for another half a year and 4 days. So let's just calm down on this guy old thing. But Justin Verlander's age 35 season, that was in Houston, his first full year in Houston, 2018, was an all-star that year, finished second in Cy Young voting, finished 10th in MVP voting, had, where we go, 6.3 WAR season according to Baseball Reference. You look at the standard season, he had 290 strikeouts, 214 innings pitched, 34 starts, a 2.52 ERA, was just absolutely phenomenal that year. And I think that's kind of similar to about what we can expect. Maybe not the workload, maybe not 34 starts or 214 innings, but I do think that kind of success is about what you might think that Jacob deGrom can do this year. Let's look at another guy, his former teammate last year on the New York Mets, and that is Max Scherzer, who is just not quite as much older than him. He's 38, so 4 years, about 4 years older than him. And his age 35 season was spent between the Washington Nationals and the LA Dodgers. So just a couple years ago. Actually, that's his age 36 season. His age 35 season was not his best season. He missed significant time that year, had a 3.74 ERA in 12 starts, 67 and a third innings, 92 strikeouts. I think I said a 3.74 ERA, which is among his worst since kind of breaking out into this star. 2012 was the last time he had an ERA that high, and that was before he won his first of 3 Cy Youngs, which, spoiler, I do think that Jacob deGrom is going to win a Cy Young in Texas. I really do. If he does keep up what he's doing, it's just the level he has attained the last few years is just unbelievably good. And also the guy who just won the AL Cy Young Award left for the NL. So competition is getting a little bit weaker there. But you look at his next season, Max Scherzer's, that is his age 36 season, he bounced right back, had 179 innings that next year, which was actually last year, a 2.46 ERA, much more in line with what he looked like for most of his career. 236 strikeouts, finished third in Cy Young voting. That is more the Max Scherzer we have known the last few years for most of his career. And then this year, He also missed significant time, only pitched in 23 games, but did have a 2.29 ERA in the 145 innings that he pitched. 173 strikeouts, was really darn good once he got back on the hill, and was a little bit better than deGrom this year in terms of results and how much he pitched, which I think is why he pitched game one of that series, even though the Mets lost it. And the only game they won in the playoffs was pitched by Jacob deGrom, who they let go to go spend a whole lot more money on people who aren't nearly as good or aren't quite as good as Jacob deGrom. But if you look at some of his career numbers, even some of these guys aren't really his contemporaries. I mean, Scherzer, I think both these guys are really close. Both these guys are first ballot Hall of Famers, and they have a larger sample size, which is why they're already going to should be unquestioned first ballot Hall of Famers. Jacob deGrom only has 9 seasons under his belt, whereas Justin Verlander has 17 seasons under his belt. He has just not quite as many Cy Youngs as either of these guys, just one shy. They were tied until this year when Verlander won his award this year, and Scherzer already has 3, might win another one this upcoming year, but did not finish in the voting this year. But let's look at where people did finish in the voting this year and where a healthy amalgamation of these last 3 years, Jacob deGrom would stack up with them. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more. You can place some bets. Eventually, once they put up lines for Jacob deGrom, I think once they do, go back and listen to this episode and to inform your takes on whether he is going to win the Cy Young or not, and whether you're going to place some money on that. If you are, head to BetOnline because it's where the game starts. Now, where would he rank among these starting pitchers? I just said that Justin Verlander left for the National League. We have a few other competitions in there, quite a few young guys actually, who I think will still be very, very good next year, and will probably bump up against him for these votes. Dylan Cease this past year had a 6.4 baseball reference WAR, which the WAR that I just calculated out for a 30-start season, averaging what he's done the last 3 years, would be a few points higher than that. Strikeout-wise, he would be a little bit below what what Dylan Cease did last year, but he doesn't walk anybody. Dylan Cease last year led the league in walks, did have a 2.20 ERA in 184 innings, and was pretty solid, was striking out a whole lot of guys, was not pitching super deep into games, did start 32 games, and didn't quite get to the 190 inning mark. But I think that deGrom is better. Alek Manoah last year had a fantastic season for the Toronto Blue Jays. Another guy who doesn't walk a whole lot of hitters, doesn't strike out a crap ton either, but led the league in hit by pitches last year. An ERA plus of 174. Really, really solid season, but again, I just think that deGrom is better. In fourth, we had Shohei Ohtani, who is going to be great, had 28 starts last year, really took a step forward as a starting pitcher, a 2.33 ERA, a 6.2 baseball reference WAR, just in terms of his pitching, not even adding what he did as a hitter, which was second in the American League to Dylan Cease and ahead of Justin Verlander. But Shohei Ohtani, I still think, not quite as good. Now, Framber Valdez, I think, didn't get nearly enough love last year. I think that, honestly, if I was facing somebody in the playoffs, I would have been more scared of Framber Valdez than I was of Justin Verlander. Part of that is just Verlander has shown a propensity to kind of blow up a little bit in the playoffs. He did a little bit this year, and Valdez is just, it's a different kind of nasty. It's the same kind of nasty that Martin Perez was this year. It's just you're not going to get anything. I'm not going to overpower you. It's going to be so frustrating because you think, oh, I should be able to hit this guy. He's not throwing 98, 99 miles an hour like Verlander or Cease or Ohtani or some of these other guys. It's just like, I should be able to hit this, but he just hits his spots so perfectly. You never get hard contact. He just never gets overwhelmed. It's always going 6 or 7 innings, and you're not going to get more than 1 or 2 runs off him unless it's a really bad day. And even then, the few times the Rangers did do that, I think it was like one time last year, they still couldn't come back and end up winning that game. It was just a very frustrating kind of pitcher. And I think he's going to have an even better year next year. He's still relatively young, still getting even better. He is going to be 29 next year, so maybe not as relatively young as I thought he was, but I do still think that Fromber might end up being the biggest competition for deGrom next year. And that's if it's not Shane McClanahan of the Tampa Bay Rays, who had a really fantastic season, a very Raisin season last year. 2.5 ERA in 28 starts, 166 innings and 194 strikeouts. Again, they really don't let their guys go very, very deep into games, because it seems like a lot of their starting pitchers, as good as they are pretty darn fragile. Last year he finished in 2021, that's what I mean by last year, finished 7th in Rookie of the Year voting, only pitched 123 innings that year, jumped it up by about 43 innings exactly this year, jumped up his strikeouts by 53. That guy has got some of the nastiest stuff in baseball. If it's not deGrom when he's healthy, I think McClanahan might have the nastiest stuff. Lefty-wise, I think McClanahan definitely has the nastiest stuff in baseball. Cease will be up there for the nastiest stuff in the American League with old Jacob deGrom, but I do think that if he's healthy, again, a little bit of a caveat, but I do think that he is just going to dominate this year. He is just so incredibly good. He is on another level, and I still cannot believe that he is on the Rangers for the next 5 years. And let's think about the possibility of him being healthy for 4-5 of those seasons, if that 6th season manifests, if that option happens. I think that would be his age 40 or 41 season, but you're looking at 180 innings a year, 150 to 180 innings per year of Jacob deGrom. That is a fantastic point to start. Again, I would like for the Rangers to maybe trade for a number 2, maybe because if they want to contend the next few years, unless Martin Perez is exactly what he is the last year for the rest of his career, then you need another top end of the rotation pitcher. You're not going to find anybody as good as Jacob deGrom, but if you can find someone that's really darn good, I think that the Brewers pitchers are officially off the table, with them getting involved in that Sean Murphy trade and getting William Contreras from the Braves in that trade, and it seems like they might have ended up winning that trade, even though they weren't the ones getting the marquee guy in that deal. But maybe there's someone else. I'll look a little bit more later on this week at who the Rangers should trade for. But if you're getting a healthy Jacob deGrom for 3, 4, 5, see this type of season, if you're getting 2 or 3 of these out of the 5-year deal, that is a fantastic deal. And if he is healthy for all of these years, all 6 of these years, then this is looking like a massive, massive underpay by the Rangers. $37 million a year for a guy who is a Cy Young, multi-time Cy Young winner, could win multiple Cy Youngs in Texas as well. That's just how stinking good he is. And he is getting paid less than Verlander, less than Max Scherzer. I think he's maybe the 4th highest paid pitcher. Maybe he's just 3rd behind only those 2, and they're on the Mets, and so the Mets are just going to overpay. They probably should have overpaid for Jacob deGrom, but they didn't do that, and I'm honestly really glad they didn't, because this guy is just absolutely incredible. And so that's why when the Rangers signed him, I thought, okay, I said if you can get 2 healthy seasons from him, like 2 seasons like this, that makes the entire $185 million worth it, because he is just that stupid good. And I'm thinking that he could be healthy for multiple years after this. We've seen how good Justin Verlander has been into his age 39 season so far, coming into his age 40 season, and won a Cy Young at 39 and 36. he's only won one Cy Young before he went to the Astros, which kind of blows my freaking mind that Justin Verlander, who was thought of as like the best pitcher in the American League for so many freaking years, only won one Cy Young with the Tigers in 13 years there. Kind of blows my mind, but it is what it is. And I think deGrom could hit that next level, could age like a Verlander who has less wear and tear on his body than Justin Verlander. And I am just so excited to see what Jacob deGrom can do in a Texas Rangers uniform. That's going to do it for today's show. Later in the week, I'll be doing a crossover with Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies. I'll be looking at some other pitchers that the Rangers could trade for, and who knows what else pops up by the end of this week, because there are a lot of moves being made, and I'm hoping that most of the big free agents and most of the moves are done by Christmas. That's going to do it for today's show, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.